All right, let's get started. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our panel, first in the AMHC Waves college series, Surviving College 101, Chaos in the Classroom. Today, we're going to be chatting about the rigors of balancing mental health and academics, so something that most of us have gone through in our lives, and it's just one of those things that especially nowadays, it's definitely a tricky line to straddle with all of the things going on in the world, especially considering the COVID situation. So we definitely want to have a discussion on how everyone's doing, and we'll look to have some breakout sessions afterwards where we can have a little bit more informal conversation. We'll be able to work on some skills, and then we'll go from there. So with that in mind, for those who don't know, the Asian Mental Health Collective is an advocacy group focused on destigmatizing Asian mental health. And we are the group that runs the Subtle Asian Mental Health Group, which we saw a good number of folks heard about the event through. So thanks for joining us from there. And you can check out the Asian Mental Health website at asianmhc.org for more information. And within within AMHC, we have the organization Waves. So that's a subset of the collective, and we are focused on facilitating in-person discussions about mental health. So a lot of times they're just informal conversations where we cultivate a space where it's just okay to walk in and just know that you're in a supportive environment that knows what you're going through. And with that, yeah, I think I should mention, and I will mention, that we are streaming live on Facebook right now, and the session is also being recorded. We will look to share out the recordings later on for those who want to take a look afterwards. And yeah, just let us know if you are comfortable with that, and we can make arrangements to make sure that you're represented accordingly. All right. Once again, I did a brief overview of the agenda, so just gonna go through that recap again. Once again, we're here for the next 2 hours, so get cozy, grab a snack, grab some food. But yeah, we're gonna start off with our panel, so that'll run about 60 minutes, and I'll hand that off shortly to Eric to introduce us to our wonderful and illustrious team of student panelists. And then we'll break out to some Q&A afterwards to allow folks to get into the conversation. And then some community rules just to for reference. It's not a replacement for therapy. We don't endorse or verify content posted by members. Inclusivity is encouraged. Please be respectful of everyone's privacy, kind, courteous. No hate speech or bullying will be tolerated. No promotions, and most importantly, volunteer how little you feel comfortable sharing. If you want to just be a fly on the wall and listen to the conversations, go for it. But yeah, and lastly, so we have the chat over on the right side for those who aren't familiar with Zoom. So you can click it open from the bottom nav, and then if you, we highly encourage folks to be chatting there. If you have any questions that come up while we're in the middle of the panel, feel free to write them down, and then Vivian, our co-host, will be jotting them down, and then we can certainly bring them up during the Q&A session once the panel is concluded. All right. So with that, I will hand it over to Eric and the group. Yeah, so Eric, if you're able to introduce yourself, and then we can do an introduction of each of the panelists that we'll have with us today. So take it away, Eric.
Yeah, thanks, Christian. Hey guys, my name is Eric. I am located in New Jersey. I'm originally from California, and I'm one of the co-organizers for Asian Mental Health Collective Waves, and really excited to be here, to talk about our experiences in college. We have a really awesome panel today, and I think it's really cool to be able to start this conversation, right? And many times it's difficult, but really excited that we can be intentional about these mental health conversations, which is so needed in our community today. So we have four panelists today, Christy, Michelle, Lauren, and Kevin. So would love to introduce them. And so we'll start with Christy first. If you can just give us, a little background about yourself and just help us to get to know you a little bit better.
Awesome. Hi. Great to be here. Nice to meet all of you guys. My name is Christy. I'm currently in Tennessee. My preferred pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm Chinese. I'm a rising sophomore at USC, and I'm originally from New York. I am very passionate about mental health, especially with the Asian American narrative. I think it's something special to us, and I'm glad that we have this safe space to talk about it today.
Awesome. Go Trojans, right? Is that what someone's saying?
Right on.
I think we had another Trojan here, Michelle.
Yes, hi everyone. I'm Michelle Fawn. I'm currently in Las Vegas, Nevada. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm Chinese Vietnamese. I am currently a rising senior, also at USC. Go Trojans. I am studying business administration. I hope to go into marketing after college, and I started to get really into mental health when I got into college because of circumstances like what we're going to talk about today, and just learning to take care of myself more and helping take care of others too. So excited to speak with y'all today.
Love the backgrounds are matching for you and Christy. Nice. Let's go to Lauren.
Hi, my name is Lauren. I go by she, her pronouns, and I technically just graduated yesterday from Cal State Fullerton. Yay! And then what else? My sister is actually a therapist, and so hearing what she's learned really got me into psychology. And then this past semester, I took an Asian American psychology class, so that's kind of how Asian American mental health has become a huge interest of mine right now.
Very cool. Congrats on graduating. I'm sure you can share a lot of experiences from your tenure of college experiences. Let's go to last but not least, Kevin.
Hi everyone, my name is Kevin Nguyen. My personal pronouns are he, him, his. So I'll be graduating within a month. So we will quarter system. I'll be graduating from UCLA. I'm majoring in psychology, minoring in Asian American studies. I'll be returning in the fall for my master's in social welfare at UCLA also. So I'm trying to pursue a concentration in health and mental health. So yeah, at least as with being here, I'm being English American and just understanding that intersectionality and those identity intersections. This is really important to me. I'm trying to bridge that gap.
Yeah. Hey, Kevin, I think there's a little bit of a lag or a little bit of a buffer on your mic. Yeah, I'm sure that surprised a few people with their volumes a little high. So. Yeah, maybe try unplugging and replugging.
Is it better?
Much better.
Okay, sorry about that. My iPad has problems. Do I have to just restart or?
No, just the end. I think we just missed the end part.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. My audio acts up a lot. Hopefully it gets better start into time here. But yeah, at least I'm pursuing my master's in social welfare. Hopefully I'll get into clinical social work, helping out with mental health regarding Asian American issues along with identity intersections.
Very cool. So early congrats to you, almost graduating. You're at the finish line. I'm sure it feels great. So thanks again. We wanted to keep this as informal and conversational as we can, right? Because we want to hear your stories. We'd like to create a space for you guys to be vulnerable, to be able to hopefully connect with people who are watching this and Yeah, and I'm sure they'll really appreciate you being honest and open, right? And so let's start with one of the most pressing topics, grades, right? I think when you go into college, there's a lot of pressure around grades, and everyone has different maybe pressures, right? Or maybe different um, mindsets when it comes to getting good grades, right? And what does that even mean, right? And so I kind of want to start very broadly, right? When it comes to grades, what was your experience like, and how has that affected your mental health?
I can start this. I grew up mostly in Tennessee, and I went to a school that was pretty like low key. Nobody really cared about grades. I think more people cared about their social status, so like going to parties. And so because of that, it was really easy for me to just put in the tiniest bit of effort and still be at the top of my class. But then when I got into college and went to USC, you're surrounded by like a million other people who are the same or even better than you. And so it's really hard to feel like you're putting in more effort, or you're putting in like lots of effort, but you don't get anything in return because everybody else is putting in the exact same amount of effort. And that switch from like not really doing much in high school and still getting all A's to then like working my ass off and wait, is that allowed? To working my butt off.
We'll bleep that out. No,
Okay, great.
no, I'm just kidding.
So working my butt off in college, but still like getting like A minuses or B's. And before like I even got into college, like I had no idea what like a B+ or was in the 4.0 scale. I never had to like bother with it. And I'm sure a lot of us have had similar thought or experiences. And so I'm still like transitioning, obviously learning how to cope with grades and deal with the fact that like there's only so much that I can do or is in my hands to do well in college. But then also like if I put in my best effort and I still don't get the best grades, like I have to learn how to deal with that and then not beat myself up and just try to do better next time. I guess like grades are coming out for me right now as we speak. So finals ended like Wednesday. So I'm waiting this week and next week I'm waiting for all my grades. So I'm just in anxiety mode all the time right now. But I mean, like after I get them and they're not like great, first of all, I have pass fail, but also if I didn't have pass fail, I think from just my first year experience in college, just knowing like this isn't gonna define me, and in like 5 years, my like wherever I'm working, my coworker isn't gonna ask me like, what was your GPA in college? So I'm just like that mindset, and knowing that grades aren't going to define me in like 5 years. I'm not gonna care about this B is very reassuring and calming.
I love that short-term versus long-term perspective. Not easy to have in the moment, but I think that's such a good way to frame things and put things into perspective. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Anyone else want to add on to what Christy shared?
I guess I can speak to what grades mean to me. Growing up, my parents definitely encouraged me to work really hard in school, and I started to put that own pressure onto myself. And kind of like what Christy said, in high school, we are the best of the best, right? And then all of the best of all the high schools come together into our own universities. So we really are competing against people that are at the same level or better than us. And I really let my grades define me, because I know in high school, when I was doing well and got those straight A's, I felt really, really good. So then why not let those good things define me? But in college, when I'm putting in that hard work and I don't get the results that I want, and then I let those negative feelings impact me just as much, if not more, than when I was doing well. And coming from Nevada, which is the 49th state in education, over to California, it's quite the adjustment for me, because a lot of people had basic lessons and classes that I didn't have access to. And some of my professors assumed that I would have that knowledge going into, like, for example, like my multi-level calculus class. You know, I've never touched calculus in my life before college. And I thought that my failure was inevitable because I was already so behind from the beginning. And I even considered transferring back to Vegas to have it a little bit easier on myself. But here I am, gonna graduate from USC and trying to learn not to let these grades define me. So that's been a thing that I've been working on a lot throughout my past couple years.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of calculus either, so totally feel you on that. And I think what you touched on around self-worth and identity at a young age due to our families putting that pressure, intentionally or unintentionally, right? I think is so necessary to be aware of, right? And if we can identify that, that usually helps the way we try to maybe navigate, you know, why we feel anxious or why we feel this pressure all the time. Yeah, I can feel that for sure with my family. Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Michelle. Anyone else want to add?
I kind of want to touch upon grades from a different perspective, because I forgot to mention that I'm an art student. And so we don't really you do get letter grades, but you're not tested on facts or like taking a multiple choice test. And so I think from that, I've learned that it doesn't matter about the grade, but the effort that you put into it. And so even if you do fail the test or whatnot, it's how you're going to improve from that point. And yeah, I think even in high school, it's like, as long as you try, it shouldn't define who you are, in a sense. Yeah.
Love that. Like effort versus performance, right? Like you're trying to measure up to how hard you're working, but that may not necessarily correlate to maybe the results that you or others have expected. How do you navigate that, Lauren? Like when, as an art student, you're constantly tasked with a subjective project, right? Or many times it's not necessarily like a rubric of things that you have to do in order to like get the grade, right? There's no checkbox.
No.
How do you navigate that?
I don't know. I never really thought about it. It's like,
or I guess in terms of when the performance isn't up to standard, like you were mentioning, right? Like you put your effort in, and then the performance could differ, right? Or the results could differ.
I think for me, like if I showed a project and the class wasn't impressed by it, but I was, we do critiques. And so it's just being open to what other people have to say and how to not necessarily change for them, but how can you change yourself to, I don't know how to word this.
It's almost like self-improvement. Like
Yeah.
you're kind of thinking more around like, how can I improve versus like what others need me to improve on.
But also taking in their advice instead of just closing off saying, your opinion doesn't matter, I'm just going to do what I'm going to do.
Yeah,
I think that,
yeah, I think a lot of the people watching will definitely resonate with that, right? I think the pressures of what others expect of you, right, could be taken constructively, but it also could be taken personally. And so maybe that's another question that I wanted to also ask is, do you take in the feedback constructively, and how do you manage that versus something that's a little bit harder to take?
Well, my professors always say, like, you have to separate yourself from your artwork because it's not you. And so with that, I've learned to just take it as a technical aspect of my art rather than, oh, your art is bad, so you're bad kind of thing. And then, yeah.
Got it. It's like having your own standard. Yeah. Anyone else want to chime in?
I guess I'll chime in because I haven't spoke yet. So at least from my, I guess like a lot of my experiences, I kind of echo what everyone kind of shared a little bit also. For me growing up, I always held this like immigrant burden because my parents came from Vietnam and such too. And at least that kind of put that in perspective, like we don't know too much. How does America work? At least like we always hear the common trope of like, oh yeah, we work hard to pay the bills. You should get a good job with like doctor, lawyer, or engineer or whatever. And I'm just kind of like, how do I get there? And so they kind of put you in this track on like, well, you need to go to good college. In order to get to a good college, you have good grades. And at least everything is defined by numbers. So grades just kind of sucked a lot because at least I was like, how do I make you happy? Because you always telling me that like you sacrificed a lot. And I don't know what that really means. So a lot of my own mental weight just kind of was placed on like, I need to do well. And even with like getting a 95, if some other person got like a 98, they're like, well, why didn't you try harder? And then I don't know, it just comes to a point where you have to like snap out of it and then find your own self-worth. Because I ended up trying to find like what is life outside of numbers and grades. It took a while to just kind of like understand that. And I think once I kind of hit that point where I'm like, oh, I'm volunteering, this is a way that I'm benefiting myself while helping other people. And just kind of understand the holistic structure of like, there's more to life than just grades. Like, especially in college, some of y'all were mentioning that like you were good in high school, you go to college, you're just average. Sometimes you just suck. Only for me, like I got an F in one of my classes, but like somehow I'm doing well enough to get into grad school, which is, I guess, some silver lining right there. So, yeah.
Yeah, you're definitely not alone in that. And we actually got a question here. I just want to make sure we can call these things out in the chat box too. How do we motivate ourselves to do well in courses that we're not excited about? That's actually a really good question too.
I think the like good thing about college is that you really get to choose. I mean, sometimes like you don't, but most of the time you have like the liberty to kind of choose what classes you want to take. So far, like I don't think I haven't yet taken a class that I'm not like super excited about. I took a writing class last year that was like required and it was the worst thing I've ever taken in my entire life and I absolutely hated it. But like I got it over with and I think like it's really just setting small goals for myself. Like even if I'm not excited to take this course, I know that like I have to take it. And so then my writing course last semester, I had to write like 4 essays and I hated my professor. But it was just like, okay, you know what? I'm going to write a paragraph like right now, get it done. And then like an hour later, I'm going to come back to it and like revise it or whatever. But just telling yourself to like do something now instead of like, oh, I'm gonna wait until later. I feel like once you get into that groove, you don't really want to stop. And that's really what kind of pushed me last semester in that class that I absolutely hated. And then this semester when everything went online and like there's nobody kind of pushing you to do work, just making yourself like a timetable and telling yourself like, I'm just gonna do this for like 25 minutes. And then after those 25 minutes, I'm going to go like watch YouTube for 2 hours. But like once you get into kind of the groove of the 25 minutes, you're like, oh, like this is fine. I could like keep doing this and you just keep typing. And I think that was really helpful. Yeah. I am also, I think as you get into your higher like level division classes or whatever, I feel like you have more liberty to choose what classes you like or don't like. I see people nodding. I don't know yet. But yeah, so this semester I got to take like a self-defense class, which was really fun. So I don't know. I feel like you can only go up.
Has anyone else taken a self-defense class or want to add into this?
Although I haven't taken a self-defense class, but I want to. I'll ask Christy about it later. But I definitely agree with Christy. I feel like when taking classes that I don't like, I kind of see them like doing chores that I don't like. For example, I like washing dishes way than I like sweeping the floor, but I still need to sweep the floor. So kind of, I think that reward aspect is really important, like what Christy touched on, like doing a little bit of it and like patting yourself on the back for it, because it's like hard work and you spent your time you spend time doing those things and we exert effort into them. So it's good to recognize more than it's like, oh, I have to do this thing. It's like, I did this thing and it's really good, so I should reward myself for it, and kind of like keeping a more positive mindset as much as possible.
Love that. It's like the start is always the hardest, but maybe the finish line, like you always need to kind of reward yourself or credit yourself for getting there, right? Because it's not easy. It's not easy to finish what you start, right? And I think that's a challenge, definitely, for myself, definitely. Anybody else want to chime in?
I could give my 2 cents on the topic. I feel like at least when your initial motivation is that like you're not interested or engaged in this certain topic, you could try to see if maybe you just haven't given it a shot, because sometimes the first impression is kind of bad. And then maybe the more you learn, you might actually kind of like it if you just try to change your perspective. But at other times, you actually just don't like it at all. And I think just kind of keep it in context, like this too shall pass. We'll just like, even if you don't do well on it, at least this is something that you don't like to do. And you're just doing it because you have to. And once you're over it, you're over it. And, that's done and done.
Love that. And I know we were mentioning the pressures that came from our families. A lot of us mentioned that we had, maybe like really strong performance in high school, right? Or our high school experience was maybe very different from, man, when I went into college, it was very, maybe much more competitive or much more intense. And so how does grades differ now that you're in college versus when you were in high school? Like, what is that comparison like? And maybe how did you deal with it in high school, right? Mentally, and how did that affect you versus now that, you're kind of on your own in college?
I'm sorry, there's a lot of aspects to that question. Can you like break it down again?
Yeah.
I'm so
So
sorry.
no worries. Let's start with the high school. How did you deal with grades in high school? And then compare that to how did that differ when you went into college?
I know in high school, grades were pretty straightforward for me. It was like I put in the hard work, I study, I get the A's that I want. It was like, wow, this is so easy. I could like get the straight A's that I wanted. And I graduated valedictorian, and then when I came to USC, like I said, it just like my perspective completely changed. I was like, whoa, now everyone here was like a valedictorian or a strong performer in high school. And then I got grades that I've never seen before on my report card, and I was just so stressed because I wasn't stressed about grades in high school, because although I worked really hard, I knew that I could do it and that my hard work directly translated to my grades. And in college, it's not always like that. In college, my grades are dependent on how my peers do, on how my professors put the tests together, and a lot of external things that are not in my control. So trying to separate my kind of like my self-worth from my grades was really difficult for me, because like I mentioned, like the positivity from my grades in high school really stimulated like my confidence and how I saw myself, because I was like, I'm doing awesome because I'm doing good in school. But now I have to see myself as more than just a student. I'm so much more than my grades and what I'm doing at school. But now I'm focused more on what I can control, which is my hard work. And although sometimes my grades don't directly translate to the work that I put in, I know that that's something I can control. And my grades that are also impacted by external factors like the curve of the class and everything, I try not to let that get to me too much.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I definitely agree with Michelle. I came from like a very similar background and had like very similar experiences freshman year, and of course I'm literally like just finished with my first year in college, so I don't have the like I don't even have advice. I just have like things that I've like struggled with and that I've learned from in the last few months. And so like I feel like so junior senior year of high school, I think I cried like maybe 5 times a week, sometimes multiple times a day. Like I don't even know why, but I just had really active tear ducts, and it just come out. And then when it was mostly because of grades. Like I would literally get like a 90 on a test. My friend got like a 95, and I would just be bawling. But I kind of carried that same mindset into college, and I learned very, very quickly that that was incredibly unhealthy, and I would be miserable for the rest of my life if I continued thinking like that. So like starting freshman year, or starting like the beginning of freshman year, I just kind of told myself, like, you're not going to get a 4.0 in college, and that's going to be okay. You're like not going to, you know, fail out and become homeless just because you don't have a 4.0. You're so much more than your grades. And even though like you feel average, it's like, what even is average? You know, like you know the worst sides of yourself, but you never appreciate the best sides of yourself, I feel like. And like everybody only presents the best side of themselves. So if you look at like someone else, they could look all like put together, and you know, they know exactly what they're doing, like their grades might reflect that, but they might also like have issues with their mental health. They're like struggling with sleeping, and balancing everything. They might go to sleep at like 6 a.m. because, you know, they have this image to put up. So I feel like knowing that, and just constantly reminding yourself that average is different for everybody, and that you are worth so much more than like this grade that you were average on. Like you have extracurricular, you have other things, and you know the worst sides of yourself. So also like appreciate the best sides of yourself, and just constantly reminding yourself of that is the most important thing. And I mean, I'm still like struggling with it, still trying to tell myself that when my grades come out next week. But yeah.
Thanks for sharing that, Christy. Anybody else want to chime in or add on to that?
Yeah. I grew up in Ohio, so you know one of the most boring.
Sorry, 1 second, Jason. We're gonna try to keep it to the panelists. We will have a time for Q&A afterwards, and we'll have a breakout sessions as well. Yeah. No, I love the excitement though. Actually, there's a topic that you touched on, Christy, which I think this would be a really good time to segue into, which is comparing yourself, right? We see so many times, whether it's from our family, our friends, or even ourselves, right, that we have this pressure to put on an image, but also we subconsciously compare, right? And so I'd love to hear from you guys, like, what was that experience like, and how has that affected you? And let's start there. Like, how has that affected you? Just thinking about comparison.
I feel like comparison can really lower your self-worth and your self-esteem. I know for myself, especially on social media, I'm a photography major, and so you just see all these people with traveling, taking nice photos. They don't even need training or a nice camera. You just take it on their iPhone. And so it's like, why am I in school for this? You know? And so that was hard on myself. I was like, maybe I'll just like drop out and take business. It's more practical. And then I took a business class and I didn't do well. So I was like, okay, maybe that's not the route for me either. So it was just a lot of back and forward trying to figure out, like, I guess it goes back to self-improvement. Like, how do I make my style unique? Or how do I be my own person, kind of thing.
Right, and that ties back into your self-worth an identity. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, Lauren.
I'll add in, at least for me, a lot of my comparisons were more from like my parents. I feel like something about like my parents, they always tend to like see the positives from other people, and they have good intentions of wanting what's best for me. So they always try like, why can't you be more like this person who's good at X, Y, Z? When I think reality is all like, you gotta normalize that like we all have our own hardships and we don't always present ourselves.
Okay. I'm just gonna raise my hand when the audio kind of goes in and out, okay?
All right, is it better? Cool, okay, thank you, sorry. But yeah, at least like my parents always saw the best in other people, and at least they always compared it to me. And it was just kind of rough because I'm just so like we're not perfect either. And it's just kind of weird how like we always try to present ourselves to be perfect with other people. And at least that's just kind of what has always been triggering my mind. It's sort of like putting up a good front, having a good reputation. And I think that's just always been something that's like salient of me, but I always felt like a weird fakeness to it too personally. So at least just trying to like be more real and just trying to like give myself more credit as I go on has always been a challenge. But even then, here and there, like even with now, like I'm going to grad school, I'm just so like, there's people going to grad school who have like kids, actual work experience and such, and I'm just kind of like, I feel incompetent. So I feel like you kind of hit those periods here and there, but then you gotta go like love yourself more, you know?
Love that. Anybody else want to add?
I think very similarly to Kevin, definitely my parents have really contributed to me comparing myself to others. I remember even when I got into college, she was like, why couldn't you get into Stanford though? Like, you know, and then I was like, oh, okay, cool. But in the back of my mind, I think like about other people's accomplishments and how they measure up with mine, and especially going to a school whose business school is naturally competitive in itself because we're all just trying to see who gets into the best company or gets the best internship. It's really hard not to look at what people are accomplishing. And at the same time, it's like conflicting because I want to cheer them on. But at the same time, it's like, why can't I be like them? Why can't I do something like that? And then it kind of downplays any of the accomplishments that I have because I think it's not as cool as the things that they've done. And then I think kind of like what you mentioned, Eric, in a more high level way, it really connects to self-worth and my own insecurities and how confident I am in myself and how much I value what I can accomplish and what I can do. And because I've always sought out external validation from other people just to like confirm, like, am I successful right now? Am I like doing okay? Just because I know my mom would be like, oh, you're getting good grades, so it's good. And if she bragged to her friends, I'd be like, yes, I'm doing good right now. But then we don't always get that external validation. And it's really important that we can support ourselves in that way mentally, because if we're relying on other people to tell us that we're doing good all the time along a standard that's not even defined, it's hard to be motivated all the time and feel good about ourselves with the comparison in our heads all the time.
Yeah, I saw something in the chat that said like, Kayla said, has anyone experienced being compared to their own parents when they were like their age? I know my parents constantly like my mom will even like talk to me about the weirdest thing. She was like, oh my god, when I was your age I was like 110 pounds and like had an 18-inch waist. Like I can't believe. And I'm like just the weirdest things. But then also like those small things just kind of make me think about what I've accomplished at my age. And like I don't know, when she was like 18, she immigrated to like a completely new country and started a life for herself. And I feel like I've always felt this, but she has had like such an exponential growth from her like 18-year-old self to her now. She came from like a really, really poor village in China, and now she's doing amazing for herself. And I just feel the need to also have to continue that exponential growth, which like, so she started like here, she's like here right now, so the line is going like this. I feel like I need to continue going like that, and that's only going to happen if I become like the next Jeff Bezos, which isn't going to happen. Maybe, who knows. So I definitely like feel that, and it's a mood, but I think it's important to remember the circumstances that you're in, and like that exponential growth can only kind of continue for so long. And I've talked to my parents about this, and they've like reassured me time and time again that like it's fine, and they really just want the best for me. And I'm really appreciative of the relationship that I have with my parents, that I can like talk about this openly with them, and not have to like worry about being incredibly like ridiculed or anything. And I'm appreciative of that. So if you can, I think like if you feel that comparison is a problem and your parents are constantly comparing you to like themselves, or comparing you to your siblings or other people, having that conversation with them and talking to them about how you feel and how it makes you feel is really important. I think talking to my parents made me feel a lot better. It was really reassuring that like it's fine. They have like expectations of me, but they don't expect me to become the next Jeff Bezos, which is like the expectation that I have for myself.
I think someone put in the chat that you'll be the best Christy Zhang. So love the support in this room. And actually, does anyone else want to kind of add in to what Christy was sharing? I wanted to ask, how did you navigate, coming out of this comparison mentality, right? And Christine, I think you touched on talking to your family members, and that's not the easiest conversation, right? Especially if your family is not supportive, and if your family or friends may not be as supportive. Like, how did you navigate that? Open to the group. Did you guys ever seek help, or did you have a conversation with somebody?
I guess I'll start with this one. I definitely started going to therapy my sophomore year fall of college, just because I think everything was getting really overwhelming for me. And it comes from also just anxieties from grades and socially and a lot of different things. And aside from that, I think the biggest thing that I took from it that can be applied to anything, and especially comparing myself, is that self-love aspect. I remember one thing that my therapist would always ask me is like, what about yourself do you like? Who is the Michelle that you want to be? And kind of like really focusing on that, because before I was focusing on being the Michelle that my parents wanted me to be, that was the good grades, and that was getting the amazing job to pay off everything that they've done for me and everything. But it's like focusing on who I want to be and how I can get there and what I like about myself. Because kind of like what I mentioned, although I'm a hardworking student and I recognize that, I'm so much more than that. I'm more than these experiences in school. I am a person that really likes going out to brunch with friends. I'm someone that really likes having deep relationships and conversations with people. And those things that I can appreciate by myself, I really hold close to me, and that I am kind of openly talking about it because I'm proud of it. And it's kind of like finding the things that you really love about yourself and getting past all the negative things, because I find that when we do find negative things about ourselves, such as the comparisons and comparing ourselves to our peers and our family members, it can put us in a really negative mindset. So just focusing on the really good things. Although I don't want to seem like I'm distracting myself from the negatives, I'm trying to address it by like overcoming them, by like having the positives there too.
And that's awesome that you shared that you went to therapy, right? Because I'm curious to see like how many students or your peers would seek out help, and like how difficult or challenging that may be, right? Um, but it's awesome that you shared that, and thank you for sharing that to the group.
Yeah, I think at USC, and I probably a lot of other colleges too, I think sometimes seeking help for those mental health things is not as openly talked about and is really stigmatized. And I know, especially like in an organization I'm a part of, I try to be open about it, especially when people ask, because I think that it is really helpful, and that you don't need to have anything wrong to go. I think it's also good to be proactive too, and just to take care of yourself. So.
Love that. I think self-love, self-compassion, like you mentioned, I think those are some things that we don't do enough, right? And Yeah, I mean, I'd love to hear a little bit more. Yeah, how did you guys navigate maybe actually seeking help or having a conversation with a friend or, yeah.
I think maybe these experiences are unique to each school, but USC makes it really, really comfortable and easier. I feel like to talk about mental health in a com- in inviting setting, because I feel like everybody knows that like someone else is struggling with something else, and USC makes it honestly really easy to get like therapy. And if you're in college, not if you're in high school and you don't have access to like free therapy and stuff like that, once you get into college, I would really recommend utilizing those services that your schools have. I know that in high school, like therapy wasn't even an option for me, and my parents honestly had no idea what anxiety or depression or any of that was. And if I even like tried to talk to them about it, freshman, sophomore year, they'd be like, "Oh my God, like suck it up." When I was your age, I was like walking 5 miles in the snow trying to get to school. But now in college, and then having those like small conversations with my parents about mental health, and then having my therapist kind of talk to me about my emotions and how to navigate that with my parents was very helpful. And I had talked to a couple of friends that were already going to therapy, and I think that was really helpful, knowing that like these amazing successful people that are doing so well in school like are also going to therapy. And then just going into that mindset that like if you go to therapy, it doesn't mean that you're losing, or that like you're any lesser than anybody else just because you decide to go to therapy. It's just kind of like a daily like checkup. Like just because you go to your physician doesn't mean that you're going to be sick. And I think having that mindset was really helpful and was what pushed me to see therapy in a different light, and then finally start going and realize like, oh, like this is really nice. It's a professional that's meant to help you with your emotions and thoughts, which is so much easier than like having a 5 a.m. crying session with your friends, which is also really nice, but like there are better ways to cope.
I really agree with Christy, and I'm glad that she has a really positive experience, and I'm also really grateful that USC has made things a little bit easier for us in terms of access to mental health services. I know personally for me, I know someone in the chat mentioned this, that recognizing that your thoughts are unhealthy is really hard. And for me, it's also something I wasn't able to do by myself because for my anxiety, I worry about things constantly, and I noticed it started to affect my everyday like tasks. It's like, oh, things get a little bit harder, getting out of bed gets a little bit harder, don't really want to see people anymore, and kind of just want to stay in bed and kind of dwell in the things that I'm worrying in. And it was in fact that like me being at home, one of my aunts was like, like what you do and how you feel isn't how you should feel all the time. And that was kind of like a revelation for me, because I thought that this is just how it is. This is how stress is like, because I feel like a lot of the things that you experience with mental health issues, you can easily dismiss as stress or something that's a little bit more temporary. But then when I did get to go seek therapy and talk about it a little more, it's like so much more than that. And I think kind of recognizing it is a really, really big step. And then taking steps towards kind of treating it is even more relieving, and something that I'm really grateful to have done. So kind of just keep an eye out for when things in your daily life get a little bit different and a little bit more difficult. And yeah.
I want to give space for Kevin or Lauren if you guys want to add anything.
Okay, I'll go. No, at least for me, I'm like, look at Lauren, like, oh, was she unmute? Okay. So at least from my perspective, I'll share a little bit more, because at least, and I'll be more open about it too. It's kind of dark, but at least I experienced like suicidal ideation when I was in middle school. Just for the whole idea of like your own self-worth is so dependent on your parents' satisfaction to the point that you don't know if you'll ever like satisfy them. And it was hard telling them that I was like passively suicidal, because like more so just to define it in case people don't know, it's like I thought that like I would like life for other people would be better because if I was gone, then maybe like other people would like I won't be to burden other people in a sense, you know. But I never really had active plans to do anything about it. And I told my parents about it, and they're kind of like, "Suicide is stupid. Why would you think that? Just like don't be like that because you're being like selfish." And then it was more difficult to just kind of like share that within my friends and community because I grew up in a very like predominantly white Hispanic area, and also kind of religious. So like any mentioning of suicide is already associated with selfish, and so just having a conversation about that would just get shut down immediately. So I just never found my outlet to validate what I was feeling, going through, and just trying to like find people to talk about it was just difficult in general. So it's something that I kind of like had to like burden on my own self until I found like the right people to talk to. And it was also a weird like cultural intersection too, where it's kind of like I can't talk about like how my parents raised me because other people can't relate to like the fact that like it's normal for Asian parents to beat your child sometimes. I was like, if you mention that to anyone, they're like, we're going to call Child Protective Services because we're like scared that your child might be in danger. Makes sense, but it's a norm for like Asian cultures. Um, but yeah, at least for me, like if you can't find support, you have to end up like finding support elsewhere. Because at least what I remember someone was mentioning about someone else who was saying like when you have unhealthy thoughts, you don't immediately recognize it as unhealthy. Like, but at least when you're on your own time, especially you just kind of like dig in all the negatives and you just kind of pile it on yourself. And sometimes you just need to talk to someone that kind of like sees the like you're more than just what you like beat yourself down with. And just as simple as talking to a friend can be very helpful. Because they're like your cheerleader that you never really thought that you ever needed. And then yeah, I always said blessed with college, mental health is so real in college to the point that like at least you can like go to services. There's more people who are like you, it's a little bit more diverse, and it's just like collective experience that like college is rough on everyone. At least we have people that can like, yeah, haha, same, you know.
I applaud your boldness and your courage. Thanks so much, Kevin, really for kind of opening the door in a sense. This is like what this whole workshop, this panel, the roundtables that we do. We try to talk about these things, and I think your boldness helps others talk about it as well, right? It's no longer something that you just like hide behind a door or hide behind your screen and say like this is not really happening, right? Like I think we're bringing it to surface, and it deserves it deserves the conversation. So I really respect and appreciate you sharing. I think Lauren, you were unmuting, muting. Do you want to?
I don't know how to follow that, but I definitely agree. Sharing helps a lot in knowing that you're not alone. Because usually when something comes up and you're like, oh, I'm stressed about this, or I'm feeling this way because of this. And when they agree with you and they express how they dealt with it, it's helpful. Because I haven't had like professional help, but just friends have given me that space to freely talk about what I'm feeling. Especially as an introvert, it's very hard to express verbally. So.
Yeah, I think you and Kevin both mentioned like having like a friend to be able to talk to can actually really change the way you see things, right? That maybe is not so complicated that you kind of didn't see. And yeah, I think having that connection is so powerful. Yeah, no, thanks for sharing that. I want to kind of shift gears just a little bit. Um, there's a topic that we kind of danced around, and this is the imposter syndrome. And so in college, can you share a moment where you felt like an imposter, or you felt like you shouldn't have been there? And we kind of talked about it, but maybe we'll dive a little bit deeper into this.
I think in a multitude of ways. Definitely when I first entered college, I like you said, we talked about it a little bit earlier, but I felt like I didn't belong at USC. especially my first year there. I am a first generation student or college student, and coming from Vegas with a family that is a working class, I felt like I definitely didn't belong in a multitude of ways. And then really the icing on the top was like, oh, cool, can't get the grades that anyone else gets either. There are multiple ways that I don't belong here in this space. And I felt like even though I was in organizations, I was taking leadership roles, I was doing cool things. Like now that I look back, I was doing a lot of things, but I still felt like I couldn't find my community in college. I couldn't find the space where I felt like this is Michelle's space in USC and this is where she belongs. I thought that I almost wanted to revert back to the comfort of being at home because I knew where I belonged there. And kind of like I felt like an imposter, like why do they accept me here? I'm not worthy of being here. And all of my accomplishments were really downplayed because of that. And I felt like I couldn't champion for myself and all the accomplishments that I had, because this is where like everything all really comes together, right? It's like the comparison piece, not being confident in myself, not seeing my self-worth, and kind of just like that's where the imposter syndrome comes in. That's where it all like stems from, you know? And so yeah, kind of felt like that through probably a lot of my like underclassmen years before I like sought therapy and getting, you know, more comfortable with myself and everything.
Thanks for sharing. Anybody else?
I would like to share I'm not sure if I understood the imposter syndrome, right?
Yeah. Oh, sorry, V. Could you put the question in the chat box? Sorry, I should have. I'm going to mention it kind of throughout this, and we are wrapping up the breakout sessions. Sorry, the panel sessions, but we will have time for Q&A and then also a breakout time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I actually wanted just to share the things in university too with the. Okay.
Yeah. Feel free to put it into the chat box. Yeah. Anyone else?
With the imposter syndrome thing, I think I really felt it when I first got into USC. Like when I first started, like that first week of welcome week, I don't know why, but I felt like I was expecting right when I got in to make like my closest group of friends ever, and we're gonna do everything together, and I'm never gonna go to like the dining hall alone. And then when like I actually got there and school actually started, you know, I was first of all terrified to go to the dining hall alone. I thought everybody was gonna be like, wow, like Christy's so lame. Why, like she's sitting alone eating. And now like I don't even care. Like I'm hungry, I'm gonna go eat. But just that like first kind of couple months transitioning from high school to college is honestly really, really difficult. And I was not prepared for it whatsoever. And now, like thinking back on it, it's like a culmination of like everything. Like I wasn't doing great in school. I felt like everything was super difficult. Like talking to people had never been a problem for me until like now. And then I was like scared about what these people were gonna think about me, because I mean, I guess like I was bullied throughout lower school and middle school because I lived in a predominantly white neighborhood, and I was like one of the few Chinese people there. So then like when I went to USC again, USC does not tolerate like discrimination whatsoever, but I just felt like I just kind of fell back into that victim mindset and being scared to meet new people and talk to new people because I had no like crutch to fall back on. I felt like in high school, at least, I had like my two best friends I knew I could rely on and always go back on. But then like in this completely new environment, I knew absolutely nobody. And so then like if I reached out and tried to make a friend and if like that failed, then, you know, everything was over. I just didn't belong. I didn't fit in. And then like following that was kind of hard to navigate, but joining clubs and then joining a group called APASA on campus was really, really, Yay, was really, really nice. And I think for all of the high schoolers that are like listening to this right now, college is like, I don't think like anything can prepare you for college. Like no matter what I say, no matter what any of the panelists say, you're just gonna have to experience it and navigate it for yourself. It's honestly like a completely different world from high school.
Can you explain what that Imposter group is, or what that is?
Oh yeah, it's Michelle was the executive director last semester, or like last year. She's amazing. So it's the Asian Pacific American Student Assembly, where basically, long story short, like the Asian American student government for USC. We just hold a lot of different events on campus that advocate for the APA narrative. It's amazing. Yeah, Patrick is here too. Patrick is also a part of APASA. He's next year's executive director.
We got the whole board here. Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, and just to clarify what imposter syndrome means for maybe some people who maybe just don't know what it is, right? You know, it's the feeling that you don't belong, or the feeling that you're not adequate enough, or that everyone else is just on another level, right? And usually it's out of not feeling that you're good enough, right? And so I wanted to also maybe add in another question about broadcasting, where you have to kind of sell yourself, right? You have to, especially, you know, whether it's in like public settings or to your peers, right? There is this kind of balance between being humble and then still being confident in your worth and who you are. Can we talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. At least for me, what I had to go through is more so like similar to everyone saying. It's like for me, I go to UCLA, and I feel like I try to like overcompensate by feeling, in order to feel like I belong, I need to do a lot of stuff. So I like overplan myself. Beyond like schoolwork, I did research, I volunteered, I did clubs, fraternities. I just did everything just to feel like, oh yeah, of course I belong at UCLA because I do a lot. Look at me, I'm fitting this like stereotype of mold. Um, but at the end of the day, I also don't want to be like that person who just flexes really weird. So I know I like to like share my accomplishment on Facebook, but I don't want it to be like in your face. So I think that social media is probably one of the biggest things for me in terms of like in terms of your question. Because social media, we tend to like post a lot of like the positives and don't give a lot of context. And I think when you live life through like a more like a filtered lens, you don't really like see all that goes on, but like the hardships, the meaning behind things, what you value, and why you're doing the things that you're doing. And so, at least for me, how I learned to kind of challenge that a little bit more. I think I try to be more honest with what I share and post, not just like saying like I got a job, but more like I'm really happy I got this job. It's something I really want to do. It ties to this passion, and so it's like kind of, yes, I'm promoting myself, and especially I think it's important to promote yourself, just so that like true friends will be happy for you too. You don't want to like like make other people feel bad, but I think it's also like important to like that you celebrate yourself and your accomplishments. Um, but yeah, at least it's just like kind of be more vulnerable and open. I think just kind of like normalizing that also can help just kind of tackle in all perspectives.
Anybody else?
So for me, social anxiety is very real. And so I think with our, going back to the imposter syndrome, it's like you're in a room filled with all these artists and you're obviously going to compare yourself. And one thing that I had to remind myself is everyone's on a different level. Everyone's had different experiences. And so it's working up to what you want to be. But I think broadcasting myself is hard because I don't want to be like, oh, look at my great art. But then people are like, oh, it's okay. And so I usually just share it with closer friends, and then they're like my marketing team. So it's like, I don't personally have to do it, but I know I should. And so, yeah. like trying to read the chat too.
I think very similarly in both what Kevin and Lauren said, like putting ourselves out there, I don't know, it can feel really awkward sometimes because I also don't want to be the person that kind of brags about myself. In a way, I guess when I was younger, I was happy that my mom did it for me and that I didn't have to do it myself, and that because and on the inside I am proud of what I accomplished, you know, but sometimes at the same time also on social media when I see the things that other people accomplish, that imposter syndrome comes in and it's like, oh, what they're doing is so cool. And like, is my accomplishment cool enough to post? Will people react to it? And it's kind of like that external validation piece for me. It's like, why would I want to post it in the first place, right? It's to hear other people recognize or praise the accomplishment that I was able to do. And it's also like a fine line between like, do I want to post that because then I'll either get the validation that I want, which is like, yeah, but then also like, if I don't get that, will it make me sad in the end for doing something like that? Like, it's like, oh, it took me so much courage to post that, and then I didn't get the reaction that I was looking for example. And it's just really hard, and I definitely still struggle, even without social media, to recognize and like cheer for the accomplishments that I've done, but yeah, it's okay. It's hard. And also, like, I feel like there's an expectation for myself to be humble and modest because I feel like that's just who I am, who I've been raised to be, but also now what people expect of me. So I think I wouldn't want to step out of that in a way.
I like how you highlighted the self-compassion aspect, right? That you're still going through this journey. It's not easy. And yeah, I really like how you highlighted that. Christy, I know, did you want to share anything on this or? Good. So we have a few more minutes, and I kind of wanted to do more of like a wrap up, like maybe take some time to reflect on a lot of things that we talked about, right? We talked, we started with grades and how that's affected our self-worth, and what does it mean to be quote unquote average versus better than others, to, you know, feeling like you always are comparing yourself to your peers, to social media, right? And how that's playing a role. And so this is a very, maybe too deep of a question, but I want to ask, where are you guys now, right? And maybe where do you want to be, right? I think Lauren was mentioning this earlier, that, you know, her goal is to be where she wants to be, right? And so maybe you guys can share, yeah, where are you guys now and where would you like to be?
This is so deep. I feel like I constantly think about this, like every night. It's just an existential crisis about who I want to be and where I want to be in like the future. I think right now, like in this very moment at 3:08, I am very content with who I am. But maybe at like 3:35, you know, I might just start crying. But I think like who I want to be is just someone who is proud of me from like a year ago. So like me as a 19-year-old next year will be proud of 18-year-old me. Like I'm proud of 13-year-old me, as like cringy and boy band obsessed as she was. Like I'm so proud of her and what she's gone through and what she's accomplished. So for me, it's just trying to be a person that future me will appreciate, and constantly just being better than who I was yesterday. And I think my main goal right now, something that I really want to work on over the summer, is just overall being a more positive person and just being someone that other people want to be around and want to talk to and feel like they can share their like kind of struggles with, being someone that can cheer other people up just through their like happy emotions, because I feel like I'm like a really pessimistic person. I'm like glass half empty, the world sucks, blah blah blah. And I really want to work on like just being a happier person, and then making the people around me a lot happier too, because I know like there are people in my life that just make me smile just by seeing them, and I want to be that person for other people.
Awesome. How about we just kind of go around and we can kind of wrap up. Michelle, you want to go next?
Sure. This is a funny question because I remember my therapist used to always ask me, who is the Michelle right now and who's the Michelle that you want to be? And I used to always stress so much about this question that I would try to think of an answer before every session because I knew she was going to ask me and I wouldn't know what the answer would be.
This is
Yeah.
triggering. Sorry.
Wait, no, it's okay. Because I remember in one of my last sessions when I told her, I was like, oh, I finally know the answer. But she told me, like, there is no definitive answer. You know, we're always working on ourselves and we're always changing, and our goals for ourselves will always change as we, you know, move along in time. So I know that right now, especially compared to the Michelle that was a freshman in college, I'm a little bit more compassionate about myself, a little bit more forgiving, a little bit more confident, still a little awkward, but that's okay. And I know that in the future, I want to trust in myself more and make the decisions in the moment and kind of not regret it. I know for me, I really stress about what's going to happen in the future. And I know during this age, it's something we all stress about, what's going to happen after college and after that. And like kind of knowing that the decisions I make right now felt good and felt right in the moment, and kind of just trusting in that and trusting in myself and that everything's going to be okay no matter what. Somehow everything's going to be okay, and kind of hopefully in the future just be unapologetically myself and not be afraid of what other people think and what's going to happen. So
You had that answer locked down. Kevin?
Oh boy. Yeah, I think about life a lot, and I think it's more so when I look back at everything, I'm like, wow, I'm a mess. But that's okay because it's kind of like I wouldn't be where I am now if I hadn't made those mistakes. And I think theoretically, I will always have my messy moments, and I think it's okay too that like you will build and grow from that. At least for me personally, I'm still working on like things as I mentioned, like imposter syndrome. Like it's great that like I can highlight like I'm doing well for myself, and I think someone was mentioning about like toxic positivity, that I can always like, oh yeah, life isn't so bad because other things are going right, and I'm ignoring what I feel bad about myself sometimes. But yeah, at least like when I acknowledge what is going off or what feels off, it just kind of crumbles sometimes for me personally. So just kind of like learning to be compassionate, but realistically trying to challenge what is a norm, like especially in coronavirus, all this kind of stuff. Like life is a mess right now for a lot of people, and I feel bad. But yeah, I feel like when you normalize, oh, this is what's now. How are we adjusting? Are we supporting the people that we love, and are we staying connected to what's been going on? And I at least from this is a different segue too, but I have this thing where I like to like rush to my end goal, and I don't appreciate the journey. And this applies to like, let's say like I want to work in mental health, but I don't have the skills and the qualifications. But it's kind of like I feel intimidated when I meet people who are like, wow, like they already have years of experience working in so and so. I admire them. I want to be like them right now. Or even with like dating, for me, like queer dating is rough. Um, just like finding someone where you can be like, I want to be secure and attached to you, but in the end, like the journey's like you need to like build up to that moment kind of thing. So understand like life is a process, and I think sometimes it's the process that makes you happy and makes you value that end goal, you know, like. And so just kind of keeping things in context has been something I've just been working on all my life.
Awesome. Lauren?
So as of now, I think I'm at my worst because of this whole COVID thing, and I like knowing what's gonna happen next. And especially just graduating, it's like everything's on hold. And so I'm just in this constant questioning of like what's gonna happen next. And so I think with that, it's you can't plan your future, and like you can plan steps to get to that point that you want, but it can go either way. And I think that's really hard for me. Continuing like from beginning of college to, it's like I had this whole life goal, or not a life goal, but I had this ideal college experience. And it definitely took different turns. And so it's just constantly reminding myself that I don't have control over everything. And I'm still working on that.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. I think the consistent theme has been, this is a journey, this is a process. And there are things that we just can't control, and that's okay, right? And I think that's part of growing, and that's part of learning and loving ourselves, right? I think that's going to be the way that we can get through this together. So thanks again, guys. We're slightly behind schedule, but I think we still have time for Q&A. So if anybody would like to maybe share or ask a question to what the panelists have shared, we can take about 5 minutes and we'll do that. So feel free to put it into the chat box, or you can unmute yourself, maybe just raise your hand in the reactions so that we can call on you, and then you can unmute yourself.
Someone
Okay.
asked, oh, sorry. I'm so sorry. No, go for it. Go ahead.
No, were you going to say someone asked a
I was
question?
just going to say Kayla asked something in the chat.
Oh, perfect. Kayla, was that to a specific panelist?
I guess just for those who have gone to therapy.
Anybody would like to answer?
I decided this semester that I was going to go through therapy. My best friend first semester went through therapy, and she told me about her experiences. And then in first semester, I think in like the first 1 or 2 months after I finished my first midterm, I'm an accounting major. I took my first accounting midterm, and I got a 95 on it, and my friend got a 98. And I was with one of my like other friends, and I saw that, and I saw that she got 3 points higher than me, and I just started bawling, feeling like my life was over, and that I like she wasn't even an accounting major. She was just taking this class for fun, and I was like, how, like, I'm an accounting major. How did, like, why am I not doing better than you? Or like, it's just something stupid like that, and I couldn't even feel proud of myself or proud of her for doing so well. And so then I like sat down and booked a therapist appointment like in those 5 minutes, because I recognized how I was feeling wasn't rational. And I mean, I think it was rational, but it wasn't the best mindset to put myself in. And like just wrapping up everything that we talked about in the last hour, just realizing that that wasn't healthy, and then realizing that I could go get help, and there were other options available instead of just constantly like being in a battle with myself. I decided to just go to therapy, test it out. If it didn't work out, there were other options, and I can always like go see another therapist. So yeah, that was how I started.
I guess just to reiterate what I talked about earlier about getting started into therapy, I have anxiety, so I stress out a lot, and then I just think about things constantly, and I worry for a really long time. And sometimes I feel the physical effects, like my chest gets really tight or I start to panic. But definitely the turning point for me was when one of my family members said that my, I guess, kind of like reactions to these things like isn't always normal, and I shouldn't always feel that way, especially when things that may not be as serious. Like I remember, for example, my boyfriend's parents were coming to town, and I spent hours looking for a restaurant. I had Yelp lists that were like 100 restaurants long, and she was like, you definitely don't need to do that, you know? And then I actually, like, when I sought help, it was just so eye-opening for me, because I thought that this was just how I was, right? Like, this is just how I react to things, and this is just how it is. But just like noticing how like my days were a little bit different when I got anxious, and it was like I'd rather just dwell on what made me feel that way and kind of just sit and think about it rather than go do something else. And especially that family member pointing it out to me, I think it was really, really helpful to help me recognize it, because I know that when we're experiencing these things, it's very easy to just dismiss it and think it's stress, or think it's something a lot not as deep as what it actually is.
Actually, Michelle, we had someone from Facebook ask, what was the last straw that made you think you should seek professional help? So you talked about anxiety, but was there something specific maybe that happened, or?
I think, that's a good question. I know specifically for me, right after, or right before, like literally the week before, my aunt told me that I shouldn't be making lists, like 100 long lists of restaurants on Yelp and everything. I had just told my mom that I was dating someone, and she is definitely someone that does not approve of that. And she basically didn't talk to me for like 2 months after that. And I just remember just feeling super anxious about it, and just caring so much about what she thinks and what my family thinks, and kind of going back to being the Michelle that they want me to be, as opposed to the Michelle that I am. And that was really the last straw for me, because I felt like I didn't know who I was or what I was supposed to do. And kind of like, so a lot of those things that kind of just ended up piling up at the same time. And I hope that was definitive enough of what the situation was.
Yeah, I think for people who are watching or listening, I think, you know, maybe they ask themselves that, right? Maybe that's a time for them to ask, like, do you need to wait for that last straw, or is now the time that, you know, maybe you do check out your therapist on campus, or you do talk to somebody, right? Because I don't think there is a perfect time. You know, in the conversation that we had, like we yes, everyone has mental health. I think the journey of like trying to maybe address or navigate or fix things isn't just a one-time like quick step, you know. Like there's a lot of these like quick fixes happening in our society, and like we said, it's a journey, it's a process, right? And so there's no real shortcuts to this. I think that resonates with a lot of things we said. Great. I want to give enough time for the breakout session, so we'll kind of conclude our Q&A here. If you guys have more questions on Facebook or you know, in our Zoom meeting, please continue to put it into a chat box, and maybe we'll have time at the end to address some of this. But amazing conversation. Thank you guys again, and we will now transition to the breakout sessions. All right. I think Christian, just want to make sure, how are we doing on time? And yeah, what are the kind of like next steps for our breakout here?
Yeah, so once again, thank you, Eric and panelists. This really great conversation. Definitely, I'm sure everyone's champing at the bit to just be able to share their own stories. So at least for the breakout rooms, we're gonna go off the script a bit, and because we definitely want to create that space more for folks to really share like where they're coming from, their story. So I think what we'll look to do is we'll just try and do an even split out of the groups, and between the two, well, we'll make 2 rooms and then split equally, so we can allow folks to just share in a smaller group setting and hear what and just share what you're going to say. So actually, come to think of it, I'm thinking maybe we just have more rooms, and then to make them even smaller and just have the random sort. How's that feeling to folks? Cool. And that is a lot less effort on my end. So you should have just kept the roll, Jed, because I'm just gonna hit create breakout rooms and automatically do them.
This is what happens.
Alrighty. Oh, I guess we have to keep the lobby though, right? We'll see what happens. I'll figure it out. All right, everyone. We'll split you all up, and then we'll look to reconvene in about 35 minutes. So enjoy your discussions.
Wait, did you want me to go into a room or did you want me in the lobby?
We'll stick in the lobby for now. Also,
Okay.
I just realized there's not a moderator in each of the rooms. Fuck. That's why we needed to do it.
You can manually reassign people.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you need to like move a moderator into each room, you can do that.
Yeah. All right, let's figure this out. Okay, so Carolyn is in one. Oh, Facebook is watching us right now, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
So everyone on Facebook, how's it going? All right, let me, what is the best way to do this? So Sean has a room. We have Knock in a room, so that's good. Vivian, let me move Kayla to,
Did you just hit randomly assign?
yes, I did. That's what I was saying. I was just like, no, this was a mistake. Oh, Jed, if you could join, let me, there's only 3 people in breakout room 3. I don't know how that happened.
That's because I'm supposed to be in there.
Oh, well, still even, can you join room 3?
Okay.
And maybe I'll just take the Facebook people. So folks at home in Facebook. So yeah, if you have any, I think we're at the point of the breakout sessions too. So one of the big things that we're really big on in these waves discussions is just being able to just share our stories. Everyone has, there's value in all of our stories. So we definitely want to be able to open that space up for you at home who aren't able to join right now. If you have any questions or comments or any stories you'd like to share in the Facebook comment section, feel free to bring them up and we could definitely just share those experiences. Oh, hello, Jed. You're on mute.
Did you want to redo the breakout rooms?
I don't know if we can do it now with just like, I mean, I can move. Because I'm just trying to think who we can move around. Because I don't want to move the participants because I feel like that'll be a little strange.
Hold on, here. Pass it to me and let me take a look. I think we might just consolidate some of the rooms. Like we can move 2 of the people out of, like, if there's like a smaller room, then we can just move them.
Yeah, okay, go for it.
Yeah, let's just move, let's just get rid of breakout room 3 then. And then we'll move this one and then.
And we can't.
I think Sean will probably be in that one.
And we can't tell them what's happening, right? They're just going to see a note.
Yeah, they'll just see a pop-up. All right, so I consolidated 2 of the rooms.
Okay. Is there a group we can bring back here? Because I like at least message to people on Facebook. Feel free to drop in comments, but I don't want them just seeing us talk about. It is.
We can't really bring them out. They have to leave. So
Jed, from now on, never let me make breakout rooms ever again. This is. Oh, good, Mark. Welcome to the room. I don't know if you were joining us from Facebook, but oh, he hasn't joined yet.
Okay. Yeah, we would have to message that room specifically and then tell them to leave the breakout room and come back into the lobby. So Do you want to do that?
Well, I mean, I just feel bad for the folks at home. It's just 30 minutes of us talking. Well, hopefully Mark can join us. This is why we don't go off the script, I guess.
Yeah,
never do it live.
All right. Sorry everybody who's watching on Facebook. I guess we can, I don't know. We can talk about our own college experiences.
Sure, yeah. Let's have a one-on-one, I guess. And we'll field questions, I suppose. Yeah.
All right, why don't we just field questions, we'll just do an impromptu, yeah.
That's what I've been doing, but no, I don't think we're getting as much traction on the comments, so I'm not sure. We have 12 people, looks like, watching at least, so, I mean, feel free to join us if you'd like to. For those out there watching, once again, the details are above us in the section, so. But, yeah, so Jed, what was your college experience like? What was... Did you go? Were you in California?
Oh man! All right. I guess it's. I guess we don't have a choice. I guess we're just gonna be here to share. Welcome, Mark.
I think. Are you able to hear us, Mark? Has your audio synced up?
It looks like it did. But they're muted, so I guess we'll have to figure out. Chat? No, not chat. Okay. We could message one of the.
What I'm doing now.
Yeah, we could message one of them. Make sure they leave the room and not the meeting. But I guess. Yeah, maybe one of the smaller rooms, either like Knox's room or Carolyn's room.
Yeah, I'm messaging the group now.
Hoping that they check their messages. In any case, I guess college experiences. I don't know. I feel like for me, I did a lot of self-discovery in college, but I didn't necessarily. I don't know if I could relate to the same level as a lot of our panelists do.
How's that?
I think it's just because I had a pretty clear idea of what I was looking for, and for me, finding community wasn't difficult because I have for me, I just found a faith community for myself, and so it was really easy for me to feel like I belong somewhere. People who had similar values to me, and people who were generally just pretty supportive. So I didn't really have a challenge in that aspect, and I feel like a lot of that. One of the reasons why I'm such a huge advocate for finding community is because those are the places, that's kind of the way that us as humans were kind of wired now to kind of interact and how to cope. And I think that having healthy communities is really important to kind of that development aspect, especially in college where your prefrontal cortex is still developing and you're still trying to learn how to make good decisions. And I think, finding the group of people that is trying to kind of keep you, encouraging you to kind of become who you want to be, right? And I think part of it is a lot of the difficulty comes from that feeling of wanting to belong and that feeling of self-development and becoming who you want to be. Sometimes one of them overrides the other, and you end up either feeling like you don't belong anywhere and you kind of feel a little bit lonely, versus the other side where you feel like you're connected but you're not really becoming who you want to be. I feel like that is a difficult I guess situation to find yourself in, especially in college, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that transition point is a huge one. I mean, just from my side, my interest in the mental health space just strongly extends from personal experience. But yeah, in the high school, it was definitely I enjoyed my the friends I had out there, and then transitioning over, it's just how do I meet new folks? And is one of those things where, I don't know, it's definitely a hard life moment where I feel like you said, you really haven't developed your own conceptions of self yet. It's you're still figuring out the world, and then all of a sudden you're thrust into this space where there's just all these other random people and you could just go in any which way direction. But I was lucky that my sister and I went to the same school, and so she was at least there before me, but there was also that was the degree of imposter syndrome, because she definitely helped me get in to an extent. So then I was just kind of like, oh, am I here on her coattails, or am I like here on my own volition? So, but it really is just like carving that niche out for yourself. I feel like the biggest transition for me was just being able to, like, because I've always been a people pleaser. So that's definitely been a big part of it, where I was never kind of doing things for myself. Like the validation I got was always external. And I think that's been a hard challenge to overcome, where you realize that like as much as anyone will ever validate you, you'll always only have yourself at the end of the day. Not only, but you'll have yourself at the end of the day. And I think just being able to accept yourself, that was the biggest lesson I had to learn through college. I'm incredibly grateful for all the friends I made along the way. Like just straight up honest truth, I would not be here today, physically, literally, if I did not have the support I had in college. So, but yeah, so shout out to all my peeps from from times before.
Yeah. So yeah.
Got any comments from Facebook? No.
It doesn't look like it. We can always, I don't know. We did have questions, right? Like we had questions.
Yeah, let's go
look at those.
Let's go through the self-compassion list. Yeah, let's do it. Oh my gosh. Jed never let me do this again. Never let me go off the cuff.
It's okay. It's a learning experience for all of us.
Right. I did say earlier, you learn from your mistakes and you own them, because they're your greatest accomplishment, because you made it through. It's just humorous at this point.
No,
all right. So, yeah, should we go into the icebreaker questions first, or should we?
I think we're past the icebreaker questions. We might as well just dive right into it.
All righty. Describe a time where you're really hard on yourself, and describe a time where you made a mistake, and how did you go about it? So one time I was co-hosting this panel event, and I decided to split everyone else out randomly. But no, I mean, I feel like I'm definitely going through a degree of that right now. So we're like talking about self-compassion right now. Like that was one of the big breakout topics we wanted to do, especially in light of the college environment. But it's a really hard skill to, like, it took me years and I'm still definitely figuring out. But like when you're going through college and everyone just seems so much better than you, how do you learn to accept you for who you are and have that self-validation? But yeah, so I guess on that, like, Jed, how do you define self-compassion, especially like in the frame of context of like when you were in college and all that? Yeah.
Hold on, I gotta take like a trip down memory lane and rewind a few years.
Yeah.
I don't know. Self-compassion. I felt like in college, and particularly like right out of college, throughout college, I think one of the things was it felt like everybody else had a lot of things to do, and I was just kind of sitting around and just like not doing a whole lot. And so I think a lot of times I was just like, am I supposed to be doing more than what I'm doing right now? Because I feel like I have a lot of free time compared to everybody else. And
yeah, no, I definitely can get that. Like there was definitely that, it got toxic to a point where there was always that mentality of just like, oh yeah, like I'm like I would be chatting with friends and be like, yeah, I was up till 6 a.m. working last night. How long did you have to stay up? And I'm like, yeah, it turned into like maybe like 1 o'clock, 12 o'clock. And then I would just feel like especially my first few years, I was just like, oh, am I not doing enough? But then afterwards, I'm just like, yeah, then if I got what I needed to get done, then sure, maybe they'll end up getting better grades than me. But like, is that what I value in life? Sure, it's important to get those grades and succeed. But like, at least for me, my college experience was defined as extracurriculars with a side of academics. So I was
I
a
think
lot.
we're in the same boat.
Yeah, no, I mean, community, like you're saying, Jed, like this is why we started up the Waves group. And I mean, like you said, like this is why you're so keen on AMHC. It's community. Once again, like that's what got me through college. Like the classes, obviously they're rigorous, but finding like those are values that I like doing my DBT studies. Like I think there's a community checkbox and like, yep, that's where I resonate. It's just like finding those communities. So I think that was a big part, just trying to discover what I valued most in my academic experience. And for all the folks out there, be it college, once again, the caveat that college isn't for everyone, whatever your life path is, whatever you value, I feel like it's never too early to try and get a sense of that and just think about what makes you you, what makes you happy to be you, and then keep pulling that thread. Don't let, I don't know, college tell you need to do this. Don't let, I don't know, but it's my prattling for those who are still with us on Facebook.
No, but I definitely feel like that's kind of, it's in that kind of crucible that you kind of just develop that you start to own your own identity, right? So for me, during that time, it was learning about being okay. Well, part of it was being okay with being by myself because everybody else was studying and I was sitting there watching How I Met Your Mother on the couch.
Good old Himium college times.
Yeah, so I think part of it was just.
I note I'm Ted, so that's what my friends dub me, and it's awful, but I accept it. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's kind of like that idea, right? Because at some point, people were like, "Hey, what are you doing? Like, do you even have to study or anything?" I'm like, "I'm a psych major. There's not a whole lot to do." And my dorm mates would come by and they're like, "Hey, you literally were sitting on this couch in the same spot when we went to class, and you're still here after we're done with like our study sessions." And I'm like, yeah, like I think that although this might not be the best way to spend my time in college, I'm enjoying myself and I feel like I'm getting what I need to do done. And I think kind of as college progressed, you just kind of own that as like it's not something that I need to be ashamed of, or it's not something that I need to feel like I'm guilty of not accomplishing something, right? At the end of the day, I thoroughly enjoyed my college experience, Hymnium and Hymnium binge watching and all, and I think that's the opportunity that you get to wrestle with those feelings of insecurity. You wrestle with those feelings of uncertainty and doubt. And I think having people to kind of, I guess, be that foil for you and to kind of balance you out, right? Because obviously, like, there were times where somebody just needed to kick my butt and tell me, yo, you need to like actually study for this midterm. And it's like, fine. There are places where people will call you out and try to get you to be a better person and try to accomplish the goals that you have set out for yourself, right? Because obviously I wanted to graduate still, and binge watching, like, going to the rec center and renting every DVD they have is not conducive to getting good grades, There's like self-care and then there's like self-destructive behavior, and it's kind of like
that's definitely a good point. Like, so how do you kind of mediate that line where it's just like, I mean, there's definitely a degree of, because there was a lot of times where I'd be like, what am I doing? Why am I just sitting here playing video games or like not studying? And it's just like, how do you find that balance where you're just like, yeah, set time for yourself, but also like one of the things I like, someone posted on one of the Facebook comments was just like, how do you manage your time, especially in college? Like, how do you give yourself the that space to do things you like and relax, but also like balancing like the fact that you have to study? And one of the things, especially I've learned a lot more recently, is just like, actually, I'm a very big calendar person. Like my calendar literally says like work, like 9 to 5, you're at work. It's all blocked off. But like literally setting myself time, like from 5 to 6 p.m. I am going to play video games, and I'm giving myself that space. And you don't have to be as like prescriptive as that, but I feel like the essence of it is just being able to tell yourself like, yeah, you need to have time for yourself to enjoy yourself. It shouldn't just all be studying. Obviously, like I still have those flashbacks of college where it's like you feel like you have no time in the world, but at like it's diminishing returns. So good old microeconomics. Oh God, that's a fun story of college. But yeah, it's, you can only, like after a certain point, you're just gonna hit a wall, and like you like you can keep pushing yourself, but it just won't be as productive. And you do need to give your brain that break to just like stretch it out, loosen up. Like I forced Eric to say earlier, we all mental health is like physical health. You need to exercise it, keep it in shape too. Otherwise, you're as a human being, you're just not gonna function on all cylinders. So yeah, I don't know what we were talking
Yeah,
about.
and kind of let's, like, if we had to turn that into like a practical thing, right? Because part of what we wanted to accomplish with this workshop is to give people some practical skills to take away from it all,
Yes.
right? Part of the whole opportunity of college is really learning to figure out how you best schedule your own life, right?
Right.
Because you have classes, like dedicated time that you have to be at a certain place, but there's also opportunities for you to schedule other things as well. And learning, like, part of what you need, part of what not you need, right? Part of the experience of college is figuring out the system that works for you. I've personally never been a calendar person. And I think that's one of the things that I feel like I could have developed more in college, right? Just to have some kind of basic level of organization. And I think that part of what college kind of gets you to do is do some of that scheduling, because, you know, they give you a class schedule and you put it into into that calendar that you get, and then you compare it with all your friends. And then you have like all the time slots, and you're like, all right, these are the times where you can hang out and get lunch. And I think part of the whole experience is like learning to figure out what works for you, right? Scheduling what you feel like needs to be scheduled, and kind of working on what you feel like, or just kind of going with the flow on other things. It really just comes down to your personal preference. And I think giving yourself the space to make mistakes, giving yourself the space to figure it out as you go, is just part of the college experience. There's no like, you have to have this accomplished by the time you graduate, because at the end of the day, like, you take away what you take away, and then everything else you can keep building on. Because like, graduating college is not the end of your life. Graduating college is like opening the door to the rest of your life. And so taking the skills that you're learning in college, kind of looking at it as like a playground where you're or maybe not a playground, but like a sandbox, kind of like conceptualizing it as a sandbox where you can explore and you can figure things out for yourself, and you can just kind of get a good idea of like, get like a fundamental, like, who am I, what works for me, who supports me, what do I value, like just getting it, not even like defining those things for yourself, but just getting an idea is already just like good enough. I feel like for college, like, that's what it's there for. It's like the tutorial for like real life.
Well, on the other side of the coin, though, it's a very expensive tutorial, and if your folks are footing the bill, and this is another particularly Asian part of the conversation. I mean, it applies to everyone, but it came up during our panel too. It's just like, how do you balance that, where it's just like, yeah, your folks are spending a good deal of money to send you to somewhere, and like, obviously, like, I mean, I agree that I believe the purpose of college is the socialization experience, like just figure out who you are as a person. But especially with a lot of Asian ideals, if the purpose is like, no, like they believe it's like study really hard, become a doctor, a lawyer, etc. How do you balance that pressure? I mean, you definitely don't want to disappoint. It's like, collectivist culture and all, we want to be able to support our families in the end, but it's, I mean, it definitely has a weight on your mental health. And being Filipino, I mean, there's Filipinos who are definitely more intensive, but my folks were very chill, a little too chill. So a lot of the pressure was self-inflicted, but it's still, I think, a general like item of like, how did you manage? I mean, I don't know how your parents were when it came to kind of like expectations and like, you need to do X, Y, Z, but like, what was that experience like?
I actually feel like my parents were pretty hands-off throughout the whole process. I think that's probably where I picked up a lot of my views on life. It's just like college is a time for you to kind of figure it out and to take responsibility and to learn how to do things on your own. And so that's kind of what I ended up doing. I had to learn to take responsibility for like my grades and everything. And I think my parents instilled a lot of like, I think they had a lot of trust in me to really do what it is that they expected of us. Oh, what? Whoa. People are coming
Hello.
back.
Oh, good. We can have conversation that's not me and Jed anymore. But yeah, no, that's definitely like we were talking about like just how do you, because we were talking about how college is kind of like that proving ground where like you can figure out who you are as a person, socialize, get to know yourself, but especially in the Asian culture, how do you balance that out with like your parents' expectations of you? Like, is it one of those things where they're like, you're like, I don't know how folks' backgrounds are, but was it one of those things where it's like, yeah, I'm not footing the bill for you to just like play around and do whatever you want? Or, but yeah.
My parents were definitely those parents in my undergrad. Like they still insisted on seeing my grades because they were paying for my education, and they would like threaten to bring me back home if I wasn't doing well in school.
Wow.
So that was like a really, it was a huge stressor, and just going into undergrad, moving away for college and not living within the structure that I was used to back at home was such a challenge for me, because I, for the first time, have to learn how to be independent and sort of survive and then flourish in some sense. And then I also, had a pretty strict upbringing, and I didn't like go to parties in high school, or I never had a drink, or never dated in high school. So now I have this opportunity to do that. And you're like very much tempted to do that and socialize with all of these other young people who are doing the exact same thing. And it's really hard to be pulled towards that instead of taking care of your responsibilities.
Right. No, definitely can agree with that. Like, especially on my end, like I was a very sheltered life in high school by choice and a little bit by compulsion. But like just getting to college, it was just like, what do I do here? Like, how do I make friends? How do I like, and it was certainly like a learning experience, but yeah, no, I can totally flashbacks.
So
Yeah.
I had a much different, I don't know, like instead of pressure being exerted like from my parents, I like twisted it back onto myself. So like I did really well in high school, and just like all throughout like childhood. So my parents never needed to look at my grades because they're like, oh, like it's gonna be the same thing we've always heard. So like my parents stopped looking at my grades from like a really, really early point. But then it just became a point of like I needed to meet my own expectations because that was the standard I had set for myself and my parents. So like once I hit college and like my grades were not looking the same way they were before, I was just like, oh, I'm the one who's wasting my parents' money. Like if I'm not meeting those same standards I put out before, like I'm just wasting their money.
Totally. Oh man, that's self-inflicted trauma. I don't know where like, and that's been something I've been trying to grapple with for years. Is like, how did it happen? Like where did it became to the point where I became so hard on myself? I mean, like it's all self-internalized. So like what made, like what was the impetus? Like, I mean, like it couldn't have just been my mind like from the very get-go saying like you need to work hard. But I mean, I think there's definitely a degree of like, I mean, obviously your parents raise you and they want the best for you. I mean, we talked about immigrant cultures as well, how there's that mindset of like, they came over here, braved a lot of odds to make it over. So maybe subconsciously, like I've developed those tendencies to internalize, but maybe there was some degree like growing up and then I just took it upon myself when they laxed up. But yeah. What was that, Jed? Oh, what was that face? Yeah.
Yeah, I think when I entered college, I became even more hard on myself. In high school, I was kind of more lax, and then I've just become increasingly my own worst critic, I feel like, almost, because when I entered graduate school, my parents stopped really worrying about my grades, but even now, I still notice that I am very much hard on myself. So, and I have to remind myself to practice self-compassion.
Right. Yeah, and I guess one topic that I don't think we touched too much on, but just like I'm curious, like show of hands, like how many people feel like at least they orient towards like that perfectionist nature where everything has to be right. Yeah, there you go. So I like, is that is that a like? I mean, it's obviously not a uniquely Asian thing, but it seems at least more of like a commonality, like just from folks in the room where it's instilled that you have to like not even just like grades and everything, but like everything in life, like everything I do for work, I'm like, now I can't just send out this report now. It needs to be perfect before I can even send out a draft. And it just, I don't know. It's definitely something that still trying to deal with and trying to find that middle ground of like, yeah, this is good enough. But
has anybody else, like when you've gotten to like a new hobby or an activity or something, like you almost don't pursue it even though it's something that interests you because you're not going to be good at it at first. Like I've started and stopped so many things that like I liked, but then I turns out like I'm bad at it, and then I just stopped immediately. And I'm like, I'm not supposed to be good at it at first. Like I spent one summer working with my family at a nail salon, and I broke down the literal first day of work and just like bawled in the back corner, and my aunt walked by and was like, "Why are you crying?" And I was like, "I don't know what I'm doing." And she's like, "You just started, like why would you?"
Yeah, no, I think that.
Yeah, that's same.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say same because I was like working in this sushi restaurant one time, and it was like under the table and everything. And like the first day, she didn't really give me any instructions. So of course, like I didn't know the orders, or I didn't even know what the sushi was called, and I was getting so confused and like stressed. And I was like, why am I so bad at this? And I was like really hard on myself, and I wanted to like cry. But yeah, I really relate.
I find myself now, well, I'm a working professional, but even now I kind of I become anxious and sometimes really stressed out about disappointing people in authority positions to me. So kind of similar feeling like how I was growing up with my parents, like having a fear of being a disappointment, but now instead of it being my parents, it's like my supervisor or even someone else who is just there to help me in my work. But yeah.
Right, yeah, and actually I'm curious about that too. I mean, it's a little bit off topic, but I think it still has some bearing on the academic side of things, but just I'm a very hierarchical, like this person is more senior than me and I'm going to defer to them. Like in school, like I mean, especially with like Western, like going to school in a Western culture, like a lot of times in the classroom, I wouldn't like, at least I wouldn't feel like it's my place, especially if I was in a class with like a lot of more upperclassmen, but there would be some like classmates who would just like have no problems. And I think that carried over to like work too, where I just still very feel like, oh yeah, you know, I'll stick around and like hear what folks have to say first. But all right, I think, yeah, we're looking to close up in a bit, but one of the things just wondering is kind of just how are like, what are folks looking to kind of like, what's a next step that you'd like to do like from this session, just like from self-reflection? Just is there like, I mean, going back to that panel, like the question to the panelists close, like where are you on your journey of self-acceptance and where do you want to be? All right, I can call someone. Jed.
Sorry, I was like wrapping
yeah,
up.
yeah.
I was closing out the breakout rooms.
Where do you want to be in terms of your self-acceptance?
Self-acceptance. I feel like I'm the wrong person to ask, because I feel like I've gotten to the point where I just am not ashamed of anything anymore. I just feel like, you just screw up sometimes. But I definitely, like, I think that, at least for me personally, like, there's always going to be opportunities to learn from your mistakes, right? And so to not have the mentality of like, yeah, I'll be fine, like, no matter what happens, but to be open to the idea of like, hey, like, my understanding may be limited, but I need to still be open to the fact that, sometimes I can be wrong, and that I do need to, like, I can still grow as a person, and there's going to be opportunities for that still. And so I don't know if that completely answers the question, but that's one way, I think that's somewhere that we can all grow from, like, just looking at our experiences as like, hey, this isn't the end all be all, and there's always, no matter how well you thought you did, there's always room for improvement, and being aware of that, but also not giving yourself a hard time for, like, not being able to be perfect, right? It's like you're striving for something, but you are also okay with the accomplishment that you've made so far. Seeing life as more like a journey of saying, I'm making progress toward this goal, versus like, I'm either here or I'm not. And to say, like, I'm not quite there yet, but we're moving towards it. And I think that that's kind of like how I would, if I had to summarize what my college experience was like that's kind of like the self-acceptance that I kind of developed, as like the not quite there, but still going. So yeah.
Yeah, no, totally. All right, so I think we're just about, I feel most folks, I mean, I think we had the timeout, so everyone should be returned now, but yeah, so hopefully everyone, your rooms gave you a chance to just discuss, debrief, and just get a sense of, like, that self-reflection on kind of how you're going through your process in college now, or high school now, or those who have already gone past, just a reflection on your, like, where you are now in life, and just how are you managing to accept yourself. So yeah, so I think we're just about at time, so we're just going to give some breakaway last items before we conclude for this session. For one, we did put together a sheet of resources that we're looking to share out with two particular topics, especially related to academic environments, so stress coping, and then also self-compassion, two skills that we feel are really vital for getting you through your years, no matter where you are in life. Once again, to echo the thoughts and the sentiments from the panelists, that colleges have their counseling and professional services. Definitely find whatever on-campus resources are offered, and just make sure you're able to find the help you need. There's also this group, anyone here, if you just need a friend to talk to, I'm sure everyone here would love to open an ear. So, but yeah, and then we have some upcoming events for professionals as well. So on the 23rd, we're having a session on grief with Dr. Therese Escardo. And on 5:30, we're going to examine Asian identity, especially nowadays during these times of COVID, with Dr. Meng Chiang. Kayla, if there's anything else you wanted to mention about the events.
Yeah, that's actually open to anyone who's interested. Next Saturday, we'll be discussing sort of the grieving process during COVID. So if anyone's been having a particularly difficult time, maybe due to the loss of something like graduation or something that's very important to you. That would be a good workshop to attend. And then, oh wait, no, that's on the 30th, right? And then
No,
the
23rd is
that's
brief, I
the
think.
23rd,
Yeah,
and then
you got
the
it, you got it.
30th, we'll be discussing Asian identity and how that's been affecting us during this time as well, due to all of the xenophobia and anti-Asian sentiments, and sort of how to practice resilience in terms of your identity moving forward.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, and then if you need more information, you can check out the Asian Mental Health Collective Facebook page. We're always keen on posting them onto the Subtle Asian Mental Health page as well. And we do have our meetup chapters for waves. Right now we have them in Atlanta, New York, San Francisco, Bay Area, and LA. So once we're free and out and about, feel free to take a look if you're in one of those areas and join us in person. Definitely would love to see you all. And but yeah, we're looking to expand out as well. So if you have an interest in kind of getting your own local group together, just reach out and let us know. Lastly, we're going to send out some evaluation forms for this. So we definitely would love to hear feedback on how the event went, what was appreciated, what could use improvement. So be as open as you want. This it only helps us to improve and serve the community better with each insight that you all have to offer. All right, and lastly, so once again, just want to thank everyone who played a part in putting this together. It's been really, really awesome to have all of us here for this space and to just share and be open about this. Thank you to our panelists, our moderator, and Jet is saying something. Yes, and yeah, with that, I think we can panelists, if you, not to put you on the spot or anything, if there's anything you'd kind of like to say to the audience, just some leaving remarks or just like any advice for folks to going forward, feel free to jump in. I can list people off, but why don't we do that just to make it a little bit easier? To Kevin, do you? Yes, I will call them out. Kevin, is there anything?
Alrighty, okay. More so, thank y'all for tuning in and just compassionately listening and just connecting with us. I think just in general, when we move towards life, just know that you're never alone. And sometimes you feel like you are alone. Just know that like there's always support out there, whether you don't get that immediately from your friends or family and such. Just know that like sometimes time isn't convenient, but there's always support. Like there are resources you can always contact. Crisis text line, helplines, and such. You know, do your best to take care of yourself, love yourself. Life is hard, but I think that's also what makes life great sometimes too, just to kind of compare that and how much you've grown. But yeah, just be kind to yourselves and we will get past this, you know.
Awesome. Lauren?
Yeah, thank you for listening to all of us today. And I guess as Asian Americans, we like to take care of other people, but just remember to take care of yourself too. It's very important.
Yeah, thank you. Kristen?
I'm so glad I'm not last. Thank you for.
All right.
I just didn't want to wrap everything up, but thank you for coming and talking and listening to us ramble on for like 2 hours. I really appreciate it. This is something brand new to me, but I'm really glad I was able to participate in it and listening to everybody's stories and realizing that I'm not alone in this, and everybody is everybody's going through the same things that you are, even if it's a little nuanced, but just know that you're not alone. Other people are struggling along with you. Yeah, that's it for me.
All right, with that, Michelle, why don't you close us out?
Wow, I didn't feel the pressure until I got called out. I think all the other panelists summed it up really, really well. I just thank you all for taking the time to have us and listen to us and it was just amazing to hear that other people resonate with our stories, because I know definitely before I partook in this, I thought that my experiences were just me and that I was alone, and like everyone said, you're not. And just to resonate, or just to reiterate what we said, I know I talked about a pivotal point in my life where I thought that I needed to seek therapy, but I also want to say that it's a proactive measure, and that it's like you don't need something to go to therapy or seek help or start to take care of your mental health in general, and that there are always people that can resonate with you and share the same narrative. So just make sure, especially during this time, to take care of yourself too, and especially as you reach out and check in on others, make sure to also check in on yourself. So again, thank you all so much for having us.
Awesome. Not bad. Not bad. I think that was definitely well done. But yeah, once again, thank you to all the panelists. And just a small note, we are looking to have continue this series with a number of different topics. So if you or someone you know is interested in being a panelist and talking about some of these topics, definitely feel free to reach out to us. We're looking for a few more folks who would be interested in just sharing their experiences. So yeah. And with that, just always remember, we all have some stories worth sharing. So honor your story, and yeah, go out there and make waves. Oh God, that's the name of the group. All right.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you everyone for joining us today. Hope you have a great rest of your Saturday, a great weekend, and hope it's restful and restorative. So, and yeah, thanks everyone.
Thank you guys.
And we are